I would just like to start off, with the beginning of the pandemic, when initially everything initially started closing down. How did that affect you and how did that affect, Miami New Drama? What was your initial reaction to everything?
Well, looking back at the beginning of March of 2020, we had been working for the last month on producing our most ambitious play we've ever done. It's a world premiere musical um, called A Wonderful World that had a ridiculously high budget of $1.5 million dollars. And it was going to be our first show that could have a chance to go to Broadway. And we were going to open it the 14th of March. And the 13th of March, our sixth preview, was the final performance. So we ended up closing the day before we were going to open. And it was a tough financial and emotional shock for us. We had roughly 30 actors. Most of them were flown in from out of town, and we had to safely return everyone. And it was a shock for us. But I have to say that it helped that I was extremely pessimistic. Um, and I thought that people were like, well, we'll be back in a couple of months, et cetera. And I said, I don't think so. I think it's going to be um, years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, because, if you look at the history of pandemics, they take a while to expand around the world and get herd immunity one way or another. And so I thought, well, maybe with luck, we'll be back October 2021. People were, laughed at me. So because I was pessimistic, I was able to pivot also very quickly. And I thought as I was packing my office and going, to my car, I looked at all the empty storefronts on Lincoln Road and visualized there were even going to be more empty storefronts in the days to come. And I thought maybe there is a way to do theater in the middle of a pandemic. And that little bug in my brain started to work. And a few weeks later, I realized maybe if I can have actors inside of a storefront, an audience member outside on the street or on the boulevard, in chairs, maybe I can do something with that. And that eventually evolved into Seven Deadly Sins, which was our activation during the middle of a pandemic. It was actually the largest theatrical event during the pandemic in the country, and most likely the world. That I don't know, but because we had to work with Equity, the Actors Union, I definitely know that we were the largest activation in the country, um, where I commissioned seven different playwrights to write each of them a 10-minute short play around one deadly sin. And so you would buy a ticket and you would kind of enter a whole block that it's blocked off for this play, and you would start this circuit of seven plays. It doesn't matter where you start from, and you just go around. There's at the beginning a small concert, and at the end a final song. And so we ran that from November of 2020 up until the last day of January of 2021.
Yeah, that's honestly that's incredible hearing like what you did to like, put that show together. When I heard about it, I was like, wow, that's awesome. What was it like, making theater in that way? It's definitely different. Like I'm sure it's different from like, your traditional stage type of theater. So how did the process change?
Well, it is a freeing thought to think of theater something more than just bringing people to a venue and they sit down and the lights dim and there's intermission and people rush to the bathroom, and there's kind of this ritual of going to a theater that we've associated tightly with the idea of theater. Whereas theater, you know, what are what is the nature of theater? Nature of theater is life's storytelling, humans telling story to humans. Now, if you understand that as a broad concept, then the possibilities are infinite, right? You don't have to be locked into a venue to be able to do quote unquote theater. So, the moment that I started to think in that matter, we are in the business of live storytelling, then I could think of 100 new ideas, and it was about that shift of paradigm, of pivoting and kind of going to the essence, because theater has been around for 2,500 years, and for the majority of that time it was all outdoors, right? I mean, look at the Greek amphitheaters. Even Shakespeare's Globe was mostly an indoor outdoor structure. um, and I mean, there's a lot of examples through history of plays that have been um, short plays that told a larger story. And so, I feel like we kind of went back to the roots of theater to help us figure this out. There's also, I have to say, a few feelings of responsibility. One is a responsibility towards our theatrical ancestors. I mean, theater, as I said, has existed for 2,500 years, and in that time, humans have done theater in horrible situations. The concentration camp of Theresienstadt during the Holocaust, humans came together and did theater. At Robben Island prison in apartheid South Africa, the prisoners, you know, hidden to the authority, they performed theater in the living room of dissidents on the other side of the Iron Curtain, or in places without freedom like Cuba or Haiti. They gathered in living rooms and they performed theater. So theater has always been performed, and I kind of felt like we owe it to our ancestors to find a way to do theater even in the pandemic. And there's another responsibility to the theater goers, that we owe it to them that we do that in a safe manner. Because if you bring people to a venue, it's a death sentence, right? We are in the business of hope and of and of bringing hard truth, but we're not in the business of putting people in the hospital. So, it was important that whatever we do need to be extremely responsible to the audience. The audience need to feel safe, um, and I feel that we've accomplished that by the way we did outdoor seating and social distance seating and wearing masks. It was an extremely safe event. And on top of that, there is a responsibility that we felt the to the actors, to the stage managers, to the playwrights, to the crew. We hired over 100 people to do Seven Deadly Sins in the middle of a pandemic where they had no jobs. So I think it was important for us to help the field survive. And so I think those three responsibilities were the ones we carry with us.
Yeah, you touched on how like a lot of people have been struggling like financially with like the loss of jobs in the industry. How have you seen this pandemic affect people?
Yes, I mean, listen, um, I we have not returned yet to do theater again. We will do so later in the fall, and I wonder how many of the people that used to be part of our ecosystem, our crew people, our ushers, how many of them have moved on from the industry and just found jobs elsewhere. So I wonder if we're going to hit the kind of crisis that the restaurant have had with people leaving the industry during the pandemic and finding something else to do. Maybe it was more rewarding. Nobody wants to wait tables or be a line chef. Maybe people don't want to work the hard hours that theater means, and so yeah, I mean, also we have to see what that is.
Yeah. So another part of like, my podcast is talking about what we think the future of the industry is going to look like after, having gone through this whole pandemic and people struggling so much financially and people struggling to find ways to perform and keep creative. So I was gonna ask you what you think everything's gonna look like, maybe in a couple months, maybe in a year.
I think that there is a thirst for theater that will never die. I think that, you know, there are now maybe other avenues like streaming that might become popular, but, you know, TV and film, they do a much better job than we at telling stories with screens in between. And I think that theater has lived for 2,500 years. Sometimes we thrive, sometimes we have harder time, but it has stood the test of time. 2,500 years. Film is like 120 years old, and television is like 80s years old. So, um, I think that there is a need for humans to be in the same space as other humans and to experience live storytelling. And so I am not pessimistic about um, about the future of theater. We all now have vaccines, and that makes us all feel safe. But there are certain things we don't have a vaccine for. We don't have a vaccine for racism. We don't have a vaccine for inequality. We don't have a vaccine for global warming. So those are the type of issues that theater should should deal with, because theater is always there to provoke. I think in this country we've sometimes allowed theater to become this safe entertainment space. But I mean, if you even look what the Greeks were doing, those are those are hard political comments in moments where doing those political comments were dangerous. Same with Shakespeare. I mean, those were a lot of big political ideas in the middle of a lot of turmoil, in the middle of almost a civil war between Protestant and Catholic, and it's it is a role of the artist, I think, not just to be part of the national conversation, but to help lead it. And I think that theater it's a great avenue to start because it's immediate. There's an immediacy to theater, and I think that in as much as theater takes that responsibility and deals with big issue, it'll always be relevant.
Yeah, a very interesting part of like the pandemic was, the rise of like Black Lives Matter and all of the protests that have been going on. And I noticed a lot of, in like going hand in hand with that, people calling out racism in the theater industry and people calling out a lot of that inequality. And I completely agree with you that theater should be used as a space to speak out against these issues and, try and, provoke change in the world and provoke that kind of, forward movement as a society. So yeah, that was really well said. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think there's also a balance. Like you don't want to preach people.
Yeah.
You have to be entertaining. There's got to be people want to buy your 60, 50, $100 tickets, but deep down, whatever work you're doing, you really need to be having an artistic investigation of some deeper truth. And it's lazier and easier not to do that. But, I think most of the very successful works of theater that we know of all, deal with some larger truth, societal truth, right? From death of a salesman, right? To, Hamilton. There's always on very successful, I think that's what they have in common. Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, they always deal with, with something. I mean, I'm talking mainstream, right? I'm talking mainstream, and even in mainstream, I think that the pieces that tend to live on are the ones they're not afraid of saying an important social statement.
Yeah. I kind of want to circle back to some things you mentioned about, like, you know, digital spaces and the comparison between like film and theater. And I'm sure you've noticed a lot of people doing like Zoom performances and stuff like that. And I wanted to like get your opinion on if you thought that that was a, a good way of adapting to the pandemic and just your general thoughts on that.
I think that more had to do with artists wanting to do something than audience wanting to see something. So a lot of the artists, people were, oh, I'm gonna do this reading here and there, and you know, that's not what theater is. Again, we couldn't do theater. So, but I think it's a great tool. For example, we're doing some readings. We are a theater of new work. So everything we do didn't exist before we commissioned, right? I mean, there's very few theater in America that are, as orthodox as we are on new work. And when we're developing work, listen, the difference between a reading in person and a reading via Zoom for the artist developing the work is not that much, right? I mean, sure, it's better to all be in the same room, but you don't lose that much. Or we gave classes. We gave, we had our mastermind. We gave, I think, over 100 and some hours of classes. And I think that is something that you don't lose too much by doing it over Zoom. In fact, you can, it was like 10,000 people or so, were part of our classes in total. We could never get those numbers in person. So definitely there's great use of Zoom, tools like that, but they can never replace theater, period. I mean, it just, again, like, watch Netflix. If you want to see something in your screen, man, Netflix has amazing content. Like, you don't need a bunch of theater geeks in squares on Zoom trying to, it's not what it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Sorry. So you also mentioned that you had like this huge, big production, like the biggest, thing you've ever done that unfortunately it couldn't open because of COVID. So where's that project lie? Are you going to attempt it again?
Yeah, that's exactly. We are returning. We're returning in December with that show, with A Wonderful World. And we had to capitalize again. Most of the expenses we had were soft costs, so we kind of need to raise the money again. And it's a big challenge for a company like ours to do it, but I think we are set in that direction. And before that, we're actually gonna do a small play that we've done in the past, and we're gonna do it for a couple weeks for free to the community. It's a great play called A Special Day. It's kind of an anti-fascist play, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's as good as theater can get, and so we will return. Miami Drama will open its doors for free, and then our season will begin in December with A Wonderful World.
Is there a particular reason you decided to make it be free? This play.
As a director, I listen to my gut. That my gut is my main tool, and sometimes I follow that, and then I intellectualize and realize why I did certain things. But I kind of really and I felt that after everything that has happened after the pandemic, I kind of felt that I wanted to just give something back to the community before we begin selling tickets. I just kind of want to, because we are part of the community. We are, and so we just want to give a gift. Sometimes we should just give a gift to the community, and we also want the community to look at us as an important part of their society. And and this is a relationship that we are building for the future. And this is a nice way to tell to everyone, you guys matter to us a lot, and we missed you. So come, this one's on the house, and and we'll move up from here.
That's really great. That's brilliant. So have you obviously you did seven deadly sins like in the storefronts, and like that's such a like amazing concept that like, you came up with. Do you think you're ever gonna do something like that again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I don't need a pandemic to think outside of the box. I think the pandemic helped me think outside of the box, and now in my mind, I have a few other projects that are, again, trying to stretch the limit of what is theater. I think that this, in the case of Seven Deadly Sins, I stretched, the idea of, well, you don't need a venue, you don't need one story. People can, you know, can see snippets. And I mean, again, I don't think there was anything really revolutionary about it. I think that the idea of like storefronts and that's kind of like where the big concept came in, but the idea of like smaller stories that tell a larger narrative is definitely not original. Um, but when you experienced Seven Deadly Sins, you knew that it was theater, and you knew that you didn't see anything similar to that before. But still, you had actors and script, etc. So I still want to figure out how else we can stretch what theater is, and definitely, although we will continue here at the Colony Theater to do big plays, we are going to continue to explore um, the outer banks of the theater universe.
And this is something that was like spurred on by the pandemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was something that I always had inside me, and then in the pandemic, I had a chance to do it, and now I feel like, oh, let it, let me, let me move it to a place that I can actually do something. That definitely, without the pandemic, I would not have occurred to me.
Is there anything else that's good do you think that came out of this pandemic?
It's hard to see. I think history is going to be a better judge.
Definitely.
Um, you know, a lot of people died, so it's you know, 500,000 more, 600,000 Americans at the moment we're recording this. It's a lot, and it feels now like we're out of it. We'll see if we learn anything. If we're just going to back to normal. If you know, if I mean, it also showed that there are kind of two mentalities in the world. There is or in the world, not in this country. There is people who value their individual freedom and their individuality above the rest, and then there are people who are more conscious about the community. Um, and we saw that clashing throughout the pandemic, from people not wanting to wear masks to people not wanting to be vaccinated. Um, and and I think that revealed, you know, a truth about our society, and that there are people who, want to pay taxes. There are people who don't believe. I mean, there are people who believe in a greater good, and there are people who believe in. And it's interesting because that kind of, if you look at the Greek plays, it's always about the relationship between the individual and the community. Um, and I think that relationship is now very evident in the American political life. That there's tension between the community and the individual, and I think that it lends itself to further story exploration of that dynamic. Um, but also, I mean, can you believe that we have to give people a lottery ticket for them to put vaccines, where other countries would give a liver for a vaccine, right? Well, you have one liver. Maybe you give a kidney. Anyways.
Yeah, so yeah, with all the tensions and all the tragedy that this pandemic has brought, with a lot of people, struggling financially and a lot of people losing loved ones and stuff like that, it has theater stayed relevant, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, theater always. I think I think theater is relevant in as much as the artist wanted it to be relevant. Um, at Miami U Drama, we always focus on our community. We are very aware of where we are in the country and what type of work we do is a reflection of Miami, of our diversity, our multicultural, multilingual, um, cultural hub that we are. So, um, I think to stay relevant, kind of the problem with theater in America in general, you have all these regional theaters across the country, and then they feed off of Broadway, and Broadway feeds off of them. But there is kind of like, you can go to whatever city, you'll find a theater, you'll see their season, and it kind of looks like any other town, right? So Miami U Drama, when you look at our season, I ask you like, oh, where is this theater located? Just without information, right? You'll say Miami, of course. Like there's, you know, so in as much as theater will across the country focus on their community and the issues of their community, theater will be relevant. If we all want to do, you know, another production of Hairspray, another production of whatever Manhattan Theater Club did last season, and like a Christmas. What's a Christmas?
A
What is
Christmas?
a Christmas Carol? What is the one that that every theater does in December? What is it? Christmas? Not a Christmas Story. What's it called?
Oh, I'm
Christmas
forgetting.
Carol? No. What's
Christmas?
the what's it called?
Yeah, A Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah,
Carol.
yeah. You got it.
We've never thought of producing it, so that's why I don't even. But like, I mean, like, come on, like, give me a break.
Yeah.
That's what. Go research how many theaters are doing a Christmas Carol, and
yeah.
I mean, do we want to be relevant, or I mean, do we want to honor? I mean, again, theater started. Like, look at the Greeks. Look at the Greek. Look, every play was extremely political, and it was, and so and it's outstanding theater. It's like exciting and it's a popular. I don't want to say populist but like the people went to see it because it was relevant to them. So in as much as we do work that is relevant to people, it will be relevant.
That's a great way of putting it. So I think to start like wrapping up the interview, this has been some great stuff. Is there anything else that you want to highlight or that you want to touch on that you think I should know and that I should include in my podcast?
Why are you interested in theater?
Why am I interested in theater? I mean, a lot of what you said spoke to me. It's like such a unique art form in my mind. To be able to, put something on a stage or just put something in front of people and have a connection between actors and people, just like this beautiful art form telling a story, making a point and leaving those people walking out like thinking about what they just saw and like having them remember that. I just think that's so impactful and powerful. Like, I can't imagine doing anything else more fulfilling with my life. I really want to be a part of that and be a part of, creating that, like, sort of experience.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, I think every story that you tell a podcast, I would tell you, make it personal.
Yeah.
Make it personal. Why does it matter to you? No? That's
great
a trick
advice.
of storytelling in general, I think. If you don't know where you're going, make it personal.
Thank you so very much for speaking with